all the technology hit the district, and I have missed the surge in technology a couple of times in my career. And the other time was when smartboards came on board. I ended up going to the administrative world, and I never got into smartboards. So I have no idea how to use a smartboard. They've been around for what, 20 years, 15 years?
Yeah, I was always the guy that was doing uh, administrator doing presentations using the smart board and not knowing how to use it very well. So I always had to have staff help me.
Yeah, yeah. This job has forced me to get into the technology world in a way that's like, oh man, yeah, I am the old guy, the old geezer that kind of knows how to use Zoom, but now I'm starting to really understand it. So it's been good. Well, what do you think, Mr. Conan?
Let's go with it. I got to record it, and we'll
All
ship
right.
it out to our people that can't make it. There is a calendar committee going on. I know there's a couple people that were on that, but I've sent it out a couple different times. But we'll just go with it, and then I'll push this out.
All right, let's put this PDF in there. So in the chat, there's a PDF. You may want to pull that down and distribute that among staff.
Okay.
That'll help just as another tool when it comes to implementing. All right, so what we're going to do first is share the screen. I'm going to go into screen sharing mode here. Mm, Decide. All right. Now, what I want you to do is go to that link, dreambox.com/K-8. You can see that, correct? I have the right screen shared with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with that. So there we go. Sometimes I end up sharing the presenter side. Be like, hey, that's the presenter side. Yeah, so go to that link and let's just take a few minutes and you can turn your volume off or whatever. But go to that link and try out some student math lessons. The idea there is really to pick an area that you're more familiar with, but also when you're working within that sample problem, which may be foreign, like I've had some teachers like, I don't get how to do it. And sometimes I don't know what they're asking for right away either. And that's just part of, getting into the mindset of the program and just what they're asking for. But uh, get in there, and if you're comfortable with it and you can answer questions, also answer the questions incorrectly and see what happens. So use the resources all over the page, the help links, um, some of the tools, get some of the problems right, get the problems wrong, and just see how the program works overall. So I'm gonna go with we'll go 5 minutes, and we'll come back at 2:40 and check in to see how you're doing. All right, I'll get my mug back up on the screen when we're ready to get back together. Okay, sound good?
Sounds good.
All right.
Hey, Tim, I got some staff calling me and texting me saying that the link in the calendar invite wasn't working, but I just used that link to click in here,
I
Okay,
did.
it
and it worked for Bruce.
worked for me. That's the same link I used. Um,
I've sent it out twice using the same link. Huh?
yeah, if I send out a different, yeah, I can't send out a different link. Maybe go
Nope.
to Zoom. I don't know if directly to Zoom. That's what I had to do that with one of my meetings. I had to go to Zoom. I had to log into my account and use the link off of Zoom, and then it worked.
Some on the number line.
What do you want me to do, John?
Keep going. We'll record and send out. Dang.
The sum on the number line.
About 30 seconds left. All right. So, two questions for the two of you. What are your impressions? What did you notice? Just talk to me about what your thoughts are of that experience.
Sorry, I just a sec. I've got somebody talking to me.
Any impressions on the experience with the student lessons? Anyone?
Um, they are animated, pretty simple and easy to follow along. You just have to follow the directions. I like that they're connected to our standards and exactly what we're teaching. I don't know if I would call that like a lesson. It's more like a practice. I feel like I would still need,
Hmm.
I wouldn't want to just let them loose without having some sort of introduction
Right.
to some of the concepts.
Yeah, and you're picking up a lesson that they, under normal circumstances, might have had other lessons that lead up to that and things like that. But also just kind of, and what grade level were you at, Mr. Jessup?
Second,
Second grade? Yeah. Did you feel like it was at the visual, it accommodated the visual or the experience of a typical seventh grader as far as what it looks like?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It seemed right on their level. I have a second graders, so as far as second graders go, some of them can't read yet, and so like I noticed when I was done with the lesson, it wanted me to rate it, and I know I would have some students who couldn't read that, uh, read all of the words there that they want you to read, but if as long as there is a audio part, they
Yeah.
can click on.
And there's a lot more audio at the K2 level than at the 3.8 level. And so that's one of the big differences between the different environments. They call them environments. We'll get to that in a second. But the K2 level is really showcases kind of that primary school level. It has a lot more audio instruction, audio support. Or when you get into that 3.8 portion of the program, not as much. And so that's a good thing for the younger kids for sure. All right, let's move on here. We're going to go into fitting this into the classroom. And this is where I get into my former administrator soapbox just a little bit. And when it comes to using DreamBox, and frankly, any program, I'm going to start really broad to start with, and we're going to narrow back down to DreamBox because DreamBox is a powerful program. I think in what I understand about this program compared to some other programs that are out there, I think this is the Cadillac of the programs. It doesn't mean that the other programs don't get you to the same spot, but I think there's a lot more options and a lot more thought involved for the student's sake that the student experiences in DreamBox. But with that in mind, like when it comes to putting this together, putting this in the classroom, my plea with teachers and with administrators as well is that this shouldn't be a tool that decorates the tool belt of a teacher. As a former cop, you carry all the stuff that you're typically going to carry with you, and you need 90% of the stuff with you all the time. And that stuff, you're grabbing periodically over the next week or two. And if you're not, you don't carry it with you because it's just added weight. It just bogs you down. So with DreamBox, however you go about putting this together, and there's recommendations, we'll get into the research in a second as well. However you go about doing this, it's consistency that really matters. So if it's one time a week, or if it's 3 times a week or 5 times a week. Whatever that starting point is, you just don't want to go backwards with kids on this one. It's demotivating to go backwards and start with 3 times a week. And then it's like, well, we're going to have to go back to 2 times a week or once a week because the message in the student's mind is this is not as important. We're backtracking on this. If you start building on this, I think if you start like say 2 times a week, it's like, well, you know what? This could be something that we could build into 3 times a week or 4 times a week. It starts to showcase its importance to students. And so I think that's something that is really important when it comes to setting this up. You want to set this up in bite sizes that you can accomplish on a regular, consistent basis. And also the one other piece I want to throw in here, so I can get off my soapbox here in a sec, is that make whatever the outcome is real for the students. So this isn't just busy work. Busy work is something that doesn't have a consequence attached to it. If there's a consequence attached to it, good or bad, it becomes valuable. And so looking at this as part of setting this up as a classroom culture, what can you take from this that you can emphasize as being important to all kids? And there's a consequence that goes with it. And something that relates to the students, the more it relates to the students, the more motivated they get. The number one piece around motivation is this. This is the correlation. It's almost a direct correlation. The deeper the need that you meet with a person, the higher the motivation. So if I find out what the students need, and that's kind of a weird question, but when you start understanding what the student needs are, you are also uncovering the student motivations. So when it comes to a program like this, now we're coming back to DreamBox, when we differentiate and scaffold and put all this information together to make our instruction more effective, if we are actually addressing a need with the students, they're going to take the reins of this and start driving this car on their own. And they're going to be more motivated to do that. So yeah, DreamBox does differentiate and scaffold within the program. It's an adaptive program. It's going to take kids and push them. One of the things that you have to watch for as a teacher with the differentiation and scaffolding is your gifted kids or your almost gifted kids, the students who are used to high levels of success on a regular basis. When they get to a program like this and they start experiencing needed and yet regular, I wouldn't say failures, but struggles, because that's part of understanding where the ceiling is as far as their learning is concerned. That can be a struggle for kids to get through. So really be careful and watch your gifted kids or your almost gifted kids because they tend to struggle initially with this because they're being challenged. If you haven't used a program that's adaptive before, they're going to be challenged in a way that is going to be a struggle that they're not used to, which is perfect because they need this kind of a challenge. They need this struggle because if learning's not a struggle, it's not learning. It's just repetition. So if I'm struggling with something, I'm going to be learning something. And so that's where we want to be in that 85% success range. We want 15%-ish, 10% of their experiences to be a struggle because now I know where their learning is. If you get 100% on a spelling test every week, I don't know where the top end is. But if I can find where the top end is, it's really important. I think it's the most important thing a teacher can understand is where do kids struggle? And that's where the learning zone is. So that's the differentiation scaffolding. It's an adaptive program that pushes kids. They're going to be about 85 to 90% successful, and they're going to be challenged into different problems that kind of pushes them into that struggle zone and pulls them back and works on them a little bit more and pushes them again and goes back and forth. There's a lot of data with this program. We'll get into the dashboard just a little bit. And the motivation, I just talked about the motivation. The best way to motivate anybody is to meet their needs. The deeper the need, the deeper the motivation. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you recommend just starting them on it and letting the application DreamBox determine where they're at, or
Yeah.
setting assignments? And because I know you can give them assignments as well.
Yep. So this is something, and Mr. Cohen, you're going to want to make sure you get this out to staff. You're going to be putting them in by grade level. Okay. Now, for your special ed or title kids, you're going to want to consider putting them in at their ability level. And here's an extra consideration for that. With your special ed kids and title kids, you may want to go one grade level below that. So let's say you have a fifth grader who's operating at a second grade level in math or a third grade level in math. I would consider entering them in when the rostering has happened, or even after the rostering has happened. You can go in through the customer support and say, I need this student to go back one more grade level. And the reason for some of that for special ed and title kids is they experience more success right away. They're going to be more familiar with the problems right away. The demotivation piece is not going to be as much of an issue at that point. So that's a recommendation when it comes to special ed kids or even title kids. Consider maybe going to customer support and saying, I want these students, these are their student numbers. I want them to go back to this grade level. Okay. Now, if they're highly successful, they're going to move through that program a little bit faster because they're not going to make as many mistakes. And so the program's going to adjust upwardly a little faster. Um, so yes, when the kids go in, so Mr. Jessup, to answer your question directly now, they're going to start in and the program's going to adapt. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks of regular use, 5 times a week. So there's a volume aspect to this to get them adjusted to where they're supposed to be. And sometimes for kids that are below grade level a little bit, they're going to struggle a lot to start with. Okay. Now, how far below grade level are they? That's a call that you make as an instructor or maybe as admin, as far as like, do I place them one grade level below? The program works, the initial working platform for kids when they first enter in at grade level, regardless of their ability, if they're going at grade level, they have a latitude of about one grade level below or above. So the program adapts pretty quickly to that range. It'll take a little bit more time to adapt further down or further up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So about 4 to 6 weeks for the adaptation to take place. And if you have kids that are obviously below, usually it's the below grade level. If they're obviously below grade level, you may want to consider putting them down or even going one grade level below that. Now, for your gifted kids, they should move through the program a little bit faster. They're going to have a lot of easier problems to start with, but it still takes volume. So if you're only doing this once or twice a week, it's gonna be a longer process. So yeah, there's a volume piece that goes along with moving these kids through. All right, why DreamBox? K-8 plus algebra. So with your eighth graders, which you guys don't have at the elementary school. Mr. Cohen, you guys are what, through fourth grade or fifth grade?
Five, five.
Five. Okay. So anyway, that's not really relevant for you guys. Student driven. So the conceptual piece and problem understanding skill or problem solving skills really force this program. What's different between this program and other programs is that it forces kids to look at programs or problems from multiple perspectives. So they may have a similar problem, but they're asked to do a slightly different task. So it's not just did you get the answer correctly? It is, can you adapt your understanding a little bit? Can you be a little bit more creative in the output of what you understand? Of course, there's the adaptive program. And again, that 85 to 90% success range is where that sweet spot's going to be. It's going to take some time to get there. But once you get there, all that data is going to be really rich. And you're going to see by strand where kids are at, standard strands where kids are at. And some strands are a little bit lower, some strands are a little bit higher. But it's really nice to see that breakdown. It's continually assessing what kids are doing. So unlike some other programs where they have trimester tests and they give them a band of problems to work on in that interim, this program does it all the time. So from the day that they work on a particular problem or problems, by the next day, the program has updated all the information on the teacher dashboard. So it's continually assessing where kids are at. Here's the proven growth, and this is something that I think is really important for teachers, for educators to understand. The research behind this program has been replicated, which adds power to the research. When you replicate research, it makes it more reliable and something that's more believable, especially when that time frame has several years in between, and also in different locations, different geography, different sets of participants are involved. And that's what this program has. It has that. Now, what's the proven growth? 5 lessons a week, about 60 minutes a week, shows about a 50% increase annually on student performance. So if you have a second grader and you're using it 5 times a week, about 60 minutes a week, you would see a second grader go through the second grade curriculum and about halfway into the third grade curriculum on average. So as far as closing the achievement gap, this is a powerful tool within that realm. And this data has been replicated and it's across demographics. Like there's no demographic that limits this either. So it's pretty interesting from a guy who I appreciate research, and it gives you the foundation of like, is it worth the while to invest the time? It is, according to the research. The other question is, what's available on your schedule? And it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. How can you make this successful to start with and build on whatever's working? If this program's part of it, build that in. There's a Spanish option if that is something that you guys have a need for.
Another question, Tim,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Um, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but our school is considering IXL
Yep.
Math 2, and it seems to me that they're both pretty similar in a lot of what they do. And so I know IXL maybe adapts to some of the higher grade levels, but other than that, are you familiar with both programs and about what the benefits are versus differences?
I will say the continuous assessment piece is huge. I'm not super, I'm not going to speak on IXL too much, but I can tell one of the big differences is the interactive nature of students with the lesson is much higher with DreamBox, period. I know that much. Another piece to this is and I believe IXL is the one that has the trimester assessments. And so there's a band of learning. It's not a huge, like, I'm not going to denigrate IXL and say, well, it's not worth the money. But here's the problem with it. With the problem with that idea. The problem with that idea is math clicks with kids at specific times that don't make total sense to the teacher. I've had students, I'm a middle school math and science teacher. I've had middle school math students where we're teaching some pre-algebraic skills. And I'm like, how could you not get this? Like I've said this 15 different ways. And then 1 week later, it clicks and they go like a rocket through some of this material. And not only the pre-algebra, but they start getting into algebra. Like it just all of a sudden makes sense. And so it doesn't make sense from a program perspective to say, well, there's going to be a cap until you take the next assessment, because now we've just limited what that student can experience. That's the problem with the old SBAC test. Why was the test only allowing kids to be tested at a certain grade level? Why couldn't we see where they could go? That makes that information even that much more valuable to the teacher and the student. So in a similar way, by having a continuous assessment with every lesson, there is no ceiling. They can go as far as they want to go vertically. And I think that's really important. Now, does that mean that this is the common question that comes up? What about the holes? Like they're learning some stuff, but they don't learn everything in this stuff. The kids shouldn't have holes in their learning. That is not true. Okay. And I'll give you an example. You get into a car and you turn on the car and you start driving. Do you know everything there is to know about the car? No. There are holes in your knowledge about a car. Is it acceptable to have holes? Yes. It's the size of the hole that matters. It's not the fact that there is a hole. So when we talk about kids going as far as they can go and learning some things, that is awesome. Yes, they're going to have holes, but life is full of knowledge that isn't complete. And we manage those holes as best we can. We don't want big holes, but we don't want to spend so much time that we try to close it so there is no hole whatsoever. So that piece, when it comes to working with programs that either have a ceiling that limit where kids are going to go, or that ones that don't, and the kids are flying through some content, sometimes it makes teachers nervous. Like we haven't covered that, and they don't fully understand it. That's okay. We go back through things in life over and over and over again. It'll be just fine. The fact that they're motivated to do some of these things is awesome. So when it comes to the adaptive lesson, I'm going to switch over to this slide now. There's adaptivity within the lesson, asking kids to do different things within the lesson, which helps them understand at a much more, I guess it's a deeper level of understanding. And then there's the between the lessons, and that's that horizontal or vertical, whichever direction you want to go with it. That's going from lesson to lesson, increasing in complexity and ideas. So both of these things occur with DreamBox. And I would say that within the lesson piece is not as strong in other programs. There's the long answer, Mr. Jessup.
All right. Um, so another question that kind of piggyback off that one. Do you know if the state, is there any news on whether the state is going to purchase it for next year for schools?
Nothing new to update. The intention by the state and by Discovery Ed is to get that renewal and to get it so that the districts don't have to pay for it. That's the goal. And I will say this as a guy who was in that realm for a little while. The legislature, in about 2 to 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks or so, the dust is going to start to settle. But I think there is so much activity going on right now. I just heard of a legislator that resigned, and now they have to fill their legislative seat. Like there's some things that's a little unsettling, but I think that we're going to start to see a better or more clearer picture around budgets and around the intentions of the legislature and the governor, because You've got the veto power of the governor, you've got the legislative body, and you've got OPI that has a budget, and they're looking for appropriations and all this stuff. So there's all kinds of things that are being thrown around. And then time is this factor that starts to filter these things down. So I think within about 3 weeks, maybe a month, we're going to start to see the dust settle. The intentions at this point on both sides is to get this thing renewed to the way it is right now. So, yeah, I can't answer until the superintendent says we're going to expend money on this and she signs off on it. It's hard for us to know. I know that she's supportive of the program. She loves the program. She used the program in her district as a superintendent there. So there's a lot of familiarity with it. That's all I can go with it on that.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So 3 parts to every lesson. There's the exploring sense making, there's the structure, there's also the fluency. So there's a progression of understanding in a concept, a mathematical concept. One thing I want to point out here, because this is important, I think, as well, is when you look at these 3 components, exploring, structure, and fluency, there's a lot of similarities between this and ELA and reading, learning how to read. We explore and we learn the phonics of how words are put together. There's a structure that goes into reading, and then there's the fluency piece to reading. And math really has its own language. This is the best advice I got as a teacher. I asked this guy who's like a 30-year veteran. This was back in the 90s. Okay. I'm a veteran that goes back to the 90s. I said, what's the one thing I should know as a math teacher? He said, go and thank your English teachers, because learning how to read is directly connected to math. Math is a language. It has structure, it has syntax, it has sentence components to it, it has vocabulary. And when you start looking at it that way, it's like, oh man, I think he's totally right. When you look at these 3 things, look at this as the language part of what's going on. When students are exposed to different problems, they're learning the language of math in components that increase in complexity up to fluency. Okay, so there's a piece there, I think, that's a good overlap. But just keep that in mind. Now, the learning environments, this is something that Mr. Jessup, you got a picture of the K2, very kid-like, 3-5. Yeah, they fall in line. And then you have the ultra sophisticated, I'm ready for life, 6th through 8th graders. And so they've done a lot of work. Actually, they're updating this right now for next fall. They're going to have some other components when it comes to students with disabilities. There's going to be a lot more help with vision impaired and audio impaired students. So that's going to be a nice added component to this as well. Some updates to lessons that were confusing. But the different environments that these students have is really going to be helpful, I think, just to appeal to them, and the different engagement areas, kind of the gaming part of this is also age appropriate. And this is the first one, this is the K2, the student engagement area. This is where they get to do like avatar modifications, buy things with coins and all that kind of stuff. I remember when I first started teaching and we were using Microsoft Word, the kids were enamored with fonts. They just want to play with fonts. This is the 2020 version of it is environments they get to play with. So there's a K2 environment. There's also the 3 and up environment as well. This may not appeal as much to your upper end kids, like your 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but that's not your building anyway. But there is the same kind of thing. They can level up. They've got these different games. They've got coins. They can modify their avatar. So some good stuff there. All right. We are going to go to just a reminder of what your instructional goals are. So when you use this program, it's a supplemental program. It's not intended to be a backbone program. However, unofficially, the data collected through this program is very helpful for teachers in making instructional decisions, because you have access to content that's aligned to standards and you can see the results real time. And so I'm finding in the short time I've been with Discovery that staff are using this as a way to see how kids are doing with standards above and beyond what their backbone math program is telling them. So, and I can't speak for the other math programs, but I can tell you this, that there's a lot of interest in the teacher dashboard and seeing how kids are doing according to standards. And we'll get to that here in just a second. As far as time goes, your K2 kids, about 30 to 60 minutes, 3 and up, about 60 to 90 minutes. So 60 minutes is kind of that average in the middle. Younger kids less, older kids more.
Is that 60 minutes a week or 60 minutes a day?
A week.
Okay.
A week. And that's the research. So if you put the time in according to the research, that's where that 50% increase over the year starts to become a reality, a real option. So when you think about that, that's what, 12 minutes a day. Now that's 12 minutes on the program. You got about 2 to 3, maybe 2 minutes on either end of setup and tear down. So you're looking at 16 minutes you're kind of dedicating a day on average. to the program. And so where do you find that time? That's another question. Like, where do I have the time for some of this stuff? I think when staff find out how effective a program is, they start making the time for it. So if you find this program is effective, I think you'll find the time that's there in your schedule to do something like that. Now, some best practices: set a weekly goal, communicate this to students, reinforce it, make it real for students, have real consequences, good or bad. Hopefully more good than bad. 5-to-1 ratio is what you want to have. Anything less than that is demotivating, but 5-to-1, good to bad, is always a good thing. Monitor student data once or twice a week, for sure once a week. Sometimes students struggle and they get this little warning triangle that pops up, and as a teacher, you need to assist them on that. You may have to have one-on-one time with them to help them understand the lesson. Now, again, this is supplemental, so they're learning out of your curricular, your regular backbone program, and this is hopefully augmenting this, or it's a standalone program that gives them more practice in math in a variety of different content areas. And providing students with feedback is also really important. All right, so now
This year,
we are going to go. Yeah, one last thing: student healthy habits. We want to make sure that they get through the problem, finish every lesson. This is really a struggle to begin with for a lot of students, especially the younger the students. When you get in that kindergarten and first grade level, maybe second grade, they just haven't had a lot of exposure to technology. So this is actually a good thing that they're exposed to technology, a different type of technology, a different look. Maybe you have different technological experiences for the kids, but helping them to persevere through this is a life lesson. So it may not even be about math initially. It's about finishing the job, finishing the lesson. Could be the most important lesson they learn the first month of exposure to the program. Headphones are a must. Kids have manipulatives on the screen that they can use. That's something that you can demonstrate with kids and show them. That's something that will be demonstrated when they log in. They're taken through a tutorial. And so you want to make sure that they have as few distractions as possible. And then working independently, the program adapts, set aside independent work time. And it's a powerful program. I got to say, it's something I'm impressed with.
Another question.
Yeah.
Can I manipulate the settings so that students have to finish a lesson before they can give up and go on to another lesson? Or
no, that's something that they can't move on to the next lesson until they finish. So it's built into the program. So that lesson that they've paused on, they have 5 to work from. So on their dashboard, they'll have 5 different lessons to choose from. And if they start and don't finish, start and don't finish, and they do that 5 times, they're going to have those 5 still staring them in the face. So natural consequences take over. You can't move on until you finish the lesson. Now, it could be that they don't understand a lesson and they don't want to get it wrong. Again, life lesson here. Help them understand that it's okay. You're supposed to get some of these wrong. You're going to get most of them right, but you're supposed to get some of them wrong. So there's that piece that, yeah, they don't get to move on until they finish the lesson. All right?
Yep.
All right, we're getting time. We're going to spend some time in the teacher dashboard. So I'm going to shift gears here real quick. And move some stuff out of the way. And pull this over. So this is so pull up your dashboard at your end, and we're not going to have the same data, but we'll have the same dashboard to look at. This is a sample, fictitious students to preserve the innocent. Let's make sure that I've got right class. There we go. Okay. So this is what you should look at. You guys see this? Mr. Jessup, Mr. Cohen, you guys both see something like this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, yep.
All right, excellent. So we're going to go through the top menu real quick on this home menu. So this is the home menu. This really gives you a look at what is being done and how much time is being spent. How many lessons have they done? And so you got the student name over here. You've got comments or messages that they can share. They cannot message each other as far as students go, but they can message the teacher, and the teacher can message the student. There is no messaging between students. Okay, this is not a social network. It tells us what their last activity is, what the status of it is. This is a paused lesson, so they haven't finished it yet. We have a student who's struggling with strategic use of order of operations in parentheses. This is a 6th grade class. And then we've got some students that are completing these different activities. Total amount of time that's being spent, total lessons completed for the week, for this week. Now, this week is not finished. We're Wednesday. So if I want to go back and look at a completed week, I can go up here, upper left-hand corner, and see what happened last week. So here's a 5-day week, okay? And I can get a different feel for how much time is being spent by those students and how many lessons are being completed, okay? Most all of these columns can be arranged from ascending to descending order. If I want to see all the like symbols here, I can do that, okay, by using the ascending, descending arrows at the top. And that's pretty much what this is about. It's a quick snapshot on students, the amount of time and amount of lessons. So like, are they being effective with their time? Is really the question that's being answered here. You can click on any student and drill down to the student level, the same information. If you want to look more specifically at a student, you can do that as well. Just as a reminder, there's a couple of buttons I want to point out here. The add assignment button up here. You can add an assignment from this window. It's probably easier to do it from the reports window. We'll get to that in a second, but you can do it from multiple locations. Also, you can change what standards you're using when it comes to the standards report. So when we get to the standards report, I can reformat it basically. I'm reformatting. I'm taking all the data and just aligning it under different headings. Okay. The data is always going to be there. The completed lessons by students are always going to be there, but it's just reformatted under different headings or different descriptions. So those are the two things I want to make sure you have here. Also, for your sake, make sure that you have a class selected. So from your perspective right now, make sure you pick a class that has students populated in it. And then we're going to go to the reports tab. In the reports tab, there's two main areas that we're going to look at. And these are the ones that you're going to spend the most time in, the growth report and then also the standards report. So let's go to the growth report first. So click on the growth report. And this is going to show us how students are doing overall as it relates to the standards, the progress in finishing standards. Some standards you can be proficient in because they only go up through a certain grade level. Other standards go beyond that grade level, and you'll see a grade level like this is 6.5. That means it's sixth grade and halfway through the year. This is sixth grade and 7 months through the year. This is the progress that they've made so far. And under this standard, this student is at the 7th grade level, the 5th month. So almost halfway through the year there, okay? That's what those numbers mean. Their initial standing will be the grade level that they're put into, and the current standing is wherever they're at. And those two things together are going to give us the overall growth. Now, you guys are starting in the middle of the year. It's not going to have the same growth total on here that you would have had you started using the program back in September. So for now, let's say you're just going to start using this program. You're going to get March, April, May. You're going to get 3 months in, 3.5 months in. So if you see overall growth over the next 2 months as a 0.2, that's a good growth. Okay, now it's 0.9 here because these guys started in September. So I want you to translate that when you're looking at the numbers on here, and when you start looking at the numbers that you have, just keep in mind that you didn't start at the beginning of the year. Okay, average growth. This is an overall measurement of the grade or the class. So as a teacher, I can say, well, are we at the 0.7? Yeah, we are. We're doing all right. Now, again, average is a balancing point, which means you're going to have some data on one end, kids that are really struggling, data on the other end, kids who are excelling, and it's a balancing point. So that doesn't mean that everybody is at the 0.7. And sometimes that disparity or the standard deviations can be really large, which means you got kids that are really struggling and kids that are really excelling, but the balancing point is at 0.7. So keep that in mind with average. Average is sometimes not the best way to look at it. Sometimes the median is the better way to look at this kind of data. Don't want to get into the data conversation right now. All right, so current target growth. So this is what I want to see. At this point in the year, I want to see every student right around or near the 0.7 or above. And so when I look at where we are at for overall growth, I can arrange this by ascending or descending order, and I can see where these kids are at. And yes, the majority of the class looks like it's definitely at that 0.7. 0.5, am I going to be really concerned that Paris is at 0.5? Probably not too much. I'm going to take a look at what's going on to see where that student's at. But 0.2 and 0.1, not good. There might be other explanations, other mitigating factors that go along with that. Could be special ed title, those kind of things, or a new student who's coming in ELL. They just haven't had a lot of experience in math overall. And this is sixth grade, so that disparity that shift between kids that understand and kids that don't understand, you start to see some of those gaps get kind of wide as they get older and go through the system. So that is your growth report. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, you can get a snapshot of where kids are at. Any questions on the growth report?
Nope, seems pretty explanatory.
Yeah. And again, there's filters at the top. You can change the month if you want to look at specific months, and you can do that as well. All right, let's close that report out, upper right-hand corner, close the report. And let's go down here to the standards report. This is the one that I would, as a teacher, I would look at a lot. This is the one that gives you more diagnostic information, like what specifically are they struggling with as a class. So this is the same class. Let's start at the very top. There's a bar at the top up here that shows grade 6. Okay, these are all sixth graders, so it's going to start off at the sixth grade. It shows the class average of how many of these standards have been rated proficient. And we have 30% of the class that is proficient in the sixth grade standards. So 30% completed basically as a class. And you'll notice that as I go to the left, fifth grade is at 66%, fourth grade 98%, which makes sense. Third grade's 100%. Yeah. And that, by this point, these kids should be 100% proficient in all of those standards at those very low grades. Now, if you're a kindergarten teacher or a first grade teacher, you're never really going to get to that 100% probably. Okay. You're going to have that lag of a few students that just don't quite get to all the standards in. And that 100% is going to be elusive for kindergarten, first grade, sometimes second grade. By the time you get to third and fourth grade, we should start to see kindergarten standards at 100%. We should start to see first grade standards at 100%. Okay. And with a K-5 building, if your fifth grade is your top level, yeah, your K1, 2 should probably all be at 100% at this point. Okay. Now, the nice thing about this, and unfortunately, kindergarten doesn't get to go backwards like the other grades do. I can go back with the same class and look at what standards are deficient and to what students are they associated with. So I'm going to take the same sixth grade class. I'm going to click on the fifth grade standards, and I can see each of these students where they're at on these fifth grade standards. Okay. And I can organize these again using the ascending, descending arrows. I chose one where they're all green. Let's choose one where they're not all green. There we go. I can show at the top all the ones that are working on the standard. That's the blue, white circle, or the ones that are proficient. And if they haven't started the standard, it's an open circle. Anywhere you see an open circle, they haven't started that standard. Now that's interesting because let's just say for Colleen here, she's got a couple of standards here that are open circles. She hasn't started them. So that's the fifth grade level. But if I go back to the fourth grade level, so that's 5 GA1, 4 GA1, where's Colleen? So she's got them done here. She just hasn't started those at the fifth grade level. So at the fourth grade level, she's got those completed, but at the fifth grade level, she hasn't started them yet. And for whatever reason, the program hasn't put those problems in front of her. Now, knowing this, and Mr. Jessup, this goes to the assignment piece. I can actually force Colleen or force the assignment into her queue and have her work on specific fifth grade geometry, whatever the standard is. I'll hold over this pair of perpendicular number lines called axes, and there's a whole long explanation. But I can put this into her assignment queue, and then she would have access to this for the length of time that I determine. All right. And it's good for that to happen when I figure out, for Colleen's sake, all right, here's where she is. When I figure out, if I go back and find out that she actually is proficient at the fourth grade level, because if she's not proficient at the fourth grade level, maybe I should make the assignment at the fourth grade level. So you really have to back up to find out where does this issue start. And that's what this report helps you with. It helps you see where these kids are at because they can be excelling in certain strands, on certain standards in certain domains, and they could be struggling in other domains or other standards. Okay. So that's where this report really does help kind of find out where is the actual issue when it comes to certain standards. Okay, so let's say I want to do something with most of the class. Let's pick one here that has a variety. This one over here looks pretty good. So I'm going to change it to ascending, descending. I've got 3 proficiencies, and I've got a couple of handfuls of students who are working on it, and a couple of students who haven't started it yet. But I want to assign this problem. So I'm going to click on the calendar icon. Takes me right to the assignment page. Now, you guys should not see these yellow warning tabs. Those are just for me. But you have 2 assignment types. This is the first decision you have to make. How long do I want to assign this assignment? Short term is up to 2 weeks. Long term is from 2 to 10 weeks. Most people, when they're doing remedial work or forcing kids to learn something that they haven't quite mastered yet, they're going to choose the long-term assignments. Short term is really reserved for brush ups. You got kids who are proficient, and I want to make sure I expose them before the mass test. So I might assign them a 2 week short-term assignment on a particular strand within a particular domain. So long term, I'll choose long term. I'm going to go with 7 weeks. Okay. Now notice I clicked on that blue calendar back on the standards report page. Notice it populated that standard into these pull down menus. It's already grade 5. Okay. So I selected that grade. It already told me that numbers and operations. Okay. That's been chosen as the domain. And then here are the strands that go into that. And it's a specific strand that I'm looking at. So this has already been populated. Notice up here that I have two things I can choose from: DreamBox units, or I can choose from, and for you guys, it should say Montana Department of Ed, I think, standards. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah, check it out. You should see that as one of the choices. Okay. So we got our duration, we've got the specific strand picked. Now we're gonna go down here and pick the students and make sure that the population is the same population I want to have working on this problem. I've got students over on the far left who have not been exposed to the problem yet. I am not going to assign this just yet. Okay. I want to work with students that already have it in progress. I want to make sure that they get even more work with this. So through the adaptive engine, they're going to get exposure to this. But I'm going to add one of the 5 problems that are in the queue. One of them is going to be dedicated to this strand. Now, I also want to look at the student population and say, all right, so which ones actually need the help? I don't think Rihanna needs it. She's at 93.4%. She's fine. The adaptive engine is going to give her what she needs over time. 80%, probably. I would probably make sure these guys have it. I think it's right around that 75% range and lower. Now you get down here to Carla and Dodie. This may be, actually Shane, where they're less than 5% or less, this may be something that they're not ready for just yet. Maybe I want to do a lesson with them before they get started on it. So I could uncheck them, I could check them, whatever. So this is where you get to choose who does what. And if I have some students over here that, I'm not so sure Shara really understands this, I'm going to put her into this group of a 7 week practice session with this particular strand. So I can choose that as well. So you have the option to choose here. One other thing I want to point out in this page is the preview lessons. I can preview a lesson with a population of students. That's also checked off. So let's go through here, uncheck all this, and I want to choose the students who haven't started. But I'm going to use the lowest level, that exposure, that first kind of exploration type lesson. We talked about those 3 different types of lessons. Here they are right here, that exploration, the structure, and the fluency. I'm going to do that exploration lesson with these 2 students. And if I click on this, it's going to take me to a window, and I can actually use this in a student-facing instructional time, where I'm using my computer, maybe it's a smartboard, and I'm teaching them off the smartboard to them, kind of that traditional classroom instructional setting. That's what these 3 things can do. And if I have the high-end students, maybe I uncheck these guys. I want to go through with my proficient students, and I go through the review lesson. I'm going to review this with Jamika, Shira, and Tonda. And that's one of those teacher-directed lessons that's up on the screen or up on the computer, and I can walk through that with them. So these 3 clickable options are different types of lessons that are basically aligned with these different categories down below. Okay. Any questions on the assignment?
No, I think it's just something I need to play around with to
Yeah.
get used to it.
Something to keep in mind, you really shouldn't be assigning anything until you get about 6 to 8 weeks of data, because you run the risk of assigning something that they're not ready for. And that's why, going back to that standards report, let me go back here real quick. With Colleen, she has a lot of lessons here that she hasn't started yet. What I need to know before I assign an assignment is how far back does that issue go? So if I just go here and I say, well, she's a 6th grader, she's going to do this problem, I'm going to assign this problem. That's fine. And there's actually good research that, you want to make sure you expose kids at grade level and also support them with remedial work where they're at. There's a lot of good research around that really helps accelerate kids in their math learning as well. So that's one one way of doing this, one process of doing it. But if I'm actually trying to go back and backfill something that's a struggle, then I need to do a little investigative work. And that's where giving the program time to populate the data is really important. So that 4 to 6 week window is kind of the minimum before you start assigning assignments, because you just don't know where they're at until they start putting the information in because of the exposures to all these different lessons. A couple more things I want to go through, and we're going to bounce around a little bit here, but we're going to go up here to, now let's see, I got to pull this down so I can actually access the settings. All right, so we're going to click on the settings tab here, and I want to make sure that we have a couple of settings that you're aware of. First of all is going to be the class settings. This is an important one because the class settings is where you get to choose your print program. So whatever hard textbook, workbook type program that you have, you can align this program with that print program. So if you go down to print program under class settings, under classroom, and find your print program. What print program are you using at Stevensville?
Envision Math 2.0.
There we go. So if you click on this, this will also reformat in the assignment window. We talked about you could have the Montana standards language being used or DreamBox. Now you have a third option. Envision Math will be in there, and it will repopulate according to those descriptors. So you can kind of, it kind of translates between the two programs, basically. So if I have a student who's struggling, I can specifically assign something that comes out of my print program. I can go back over to the DreamBox program, align it, change it over to Envision Math, and look at my assignments. And I can assign something that aligns by description or by domain back to my print program. So it's kind of an organizational thing. Also, scope and sequence. When the kids are going through this program and you choose the print program, so Envision Math 2.0, it starts to follow the typical sequence that you'd find in that print program from September through May. The same thing with DreamBox Learning, September through May. That exposure is going to be along those same lines. If they're at grade level and their adaptive engine is seeing that, but their exposure is going to be aligned that way. So this is a really good setting to choose. And the biggest benefit really is in assigning the assignments. That's really the biggest benefit. Next, go to engagement restrictions. This is that avatar, the coins, all that stuff. I can choose when during the week and at what time during the day that the engagement area is open for them to play with. A lot of teachers will have just Friday, and they'll go through and they'll uncheck Monday through Thursday, and they use this as leverage. That goes back to like making the consequences real for students. We can go back and check the teacher dashboard, make sure everybody's at least tried one of the assigned assignments and make sure that those assignments are actually being attempted. That's one measure that you could use for this and say, okay, we're going to turn on the arcade for everybody. You can actually wait until, leave this off, check in with all the kids, and then on Fridays, turn it all on. You can also adjust the classroom hours. So maybe you only want it to be in the afternoon. So if I increase this to 12:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m., it's only active in the afternoon on Fridays or at home from 12:30 to 4 p.m. at home, non-classroom hours. So Saturday and Sunday, kids could enjoy this. If they have the single sign-on for home, they can do this at home, and this is where the engagement would also be open during this time. So that's another important setting to have, and you can manipulate this however you want. Okay? And of course, hit the update button on either this or the print program. Don't forget to hit the update button, and that will update the settings for the engagement restrictions. All right. We're going to go back to the reports page. I want to show you a couple more reports with the time we have left. Activity feed, real quick. If you click on the activity feed button, I can see what the class is doing, where we're at. If I click on the student, I can see what the student has been doing from day to day. I'm going backwards in time. Okay. And if a student is struggling with a lesson, right here, writing a translation rule, I can hit play. And that is just like back at the assignment tab when I could do a lesson with the students in a teacher directed setting. Same thing here. I can get that student over by me. I can hit play, and that student and I can work on this on the computer right at that moment. Okay. So that's under the activity feed. Go back. Here's the classroom setting. All right. One more. I think this one's toss up between these two with the 2 minutes we've got, or the minute we have left. But this is the, oh, I forgot the title already. I want the official title, the proficiency by grade title. Okay, that's the proficiency by grade. If I want to take a look at this, I can see where kids are at, and students that have particular interests, that sometimes it's geometry, that's spatial awareness, and they excel through that. They go above grade level. You might see something like Jamaica. Whatever that standard or strands are that Jamaica is really thrilled about and is really motivated to do, she's at the 8th grade level on some of these strands as far as proficiency goes. So that's really a cool thing to take a look at and see a snapshot of where kids are at. And again, you can go down to the student level and get student level information. Let's see. I think that's pretty much, we got PD resources. Yeah, all kinds of good information in the curriculum. If you want to see the scope and sequence of the curriculum, you click on the tab and you can get some of that information. Now, the upcoming trainings for this are then going to be around data. So in about 4 to 6 weeks before the school's out, hopefully, get together again with staff and we start going over the teacher dashboard, but we're starting to look at actual student data and what is it that we can look at and start to determine, like, how can I help this particular student? What are the things I can use? What assignments should I be using? That kind of thing. So we want to really start getting into the student data side, but you have to have the data to do that. So we need about 4 to 6 weeks for that data to populate into the student accounts and onto the teacher dashboard. Any questions before I wrap up?
No, Tim, I really hope this continues. There's a lot of components when I went through IXL, because our middle school and high school, we were looking at IXL to be able to, there's so many different pieces to it that'll help with assessment for them and building assessments that goes with the curriculum. But there's so many pieces to DreamBox with this data piece of it and standards tracking that I think would be very beneficial and more cost effective, obviously. Like you talked about earlier, this frees up general fund money from this by not putting money into IXL at that level if we can use this.
Yeah. And the nice thing about the middle school side, because I know where you're headed as far as your job goes, is the middle school level goes all the way into high school algebra. So it's a K-8 program, but it reaches out there and grabs onto the high school algebra for those high ability 8th graders. So they're actually getting high school algebra exposure at the high end of the 8th grade experience. Yeah. So
Yeah, I like it. I like what I'm seeing. I just hope we can continue next year.
mhm. Well, letters to the superintendent, letters to legislators. It's all about funding and where they put their priorities in funding, and that's, at this point, I'm at a loss. It's a real dust up in the legislature this year. So
True. Very
other
true.
years I can predict, but this is one of those years like, wow, there are some serious personalities at play here.
All right, I'm
So,
gonna stop recording here.
all right.